Hey everyone, it's Sevy. Welcome to my guide on how to beat floor 11 and 12 of the 4.8 cycle. The enemies here are quite familiar, but some floor 12 chambers once again come in several waves, and the Legatus Golem is making its Abyss debut. As usual, this video discusses strategies and tips to help you beat the chambers more easily. I'll just flash some very general reminders before you tackle Spiral Abyss, which you can pause to take a quick read. This Abyss Blessing gives characters crit rate and crit damage bonuses when they attack burning enemies. Starting with floor 11, it gives a 75% Denjo damage bonus, which is nice if you opt to use Denjo characters here. But this floor doesn't really have significant elemental restrictions, so don't feel pressured to use Dendro. All these chambers have waves of multiple enemies, so teams that deal AoE damage will generally be a big help on both sides. My teams for this floor will be Hyperbloom Freeze for the first half and a Chevreuse Overload for the second. First up is a Defend the Monolith, which is thankfully way easier than the previous Abyss. We start with 3 Ruin monsters. You want to aggro the ones at the side, otherwise they'll teleport to the monolith and start dealing damage over time to it. An AoE attack should simultaneously get their attention. If any does get to the monolith, prioritize it to minimize its damage. For the second wave of Ruin monsters, it's a good idea to aggro all of them at once again, and if any gets through to the monolith, prioritize them again.
Rain outlines your fate.
In the second half, you start with a trio of Pyro Slimes. Simply get their attention by hitting them to prevent them from jumping on the monoliths, and they're quite easy to kill.
To ashes!
Then we have 3 Baptismal Bishops that spawn close to each other. These are once again easy to aggro. But you don't want them to drain your energy, so it's best to interrupt them while they're charging up their projectile.
Let's light it up!
Lastly, the upcoming Mitotral waves seem to target you first if you're close enough. But whether they go to you or the monolith first, they're at least clumped very closely together, so it should be very easy to kill them all at once with AoE attacks.
By royal decree!
The next chambers are pretty much a DPS check. First are 3 Nobushi. You can approach them from the side to prevent them from spreading out far away from each other, but try to keep them in this area because this is where the next wave also spawns. We now have a pair of Kairagi, and as always, it's best to kill them at the same time to prevent the other from regenerating its HP. But even if one gets its HP back, the chamber should still be manageable. Last is a solo Pyro Eremite. Kill its summon to stun it and lower its damage resistances for a faster kill.
Judgment!
In this second half, it starts with 3 Pyro Fatui agents. They will go invisible, but they'll generally aggro you, so AoE attacks will help hit them consistently even if you can't see them. Shielding or interruption resistance buffs help stop you getting staggered by their spinning blades.
Let's midnight fantastic! To ashes!
Leaving so
Let's light it up!
Then there are 3 Eremites, and fighting them is pretty straightforward since these guys don't summon anything.
Wings darkness! Eyes on me! Let's light it up!
meat.
And we go!
Last are 2 Stonehide Lava Trolls, and they'll be aggressive with attacks that can hit pretty hard, so shielding or dodging will help prevent you getting thrown around.
Let's Oz reveal!
On to the third chamber. This starts with 2 Baptismal Bishops, and they're nothing new. They'll follow you around, so it will be easy to deal damage to them. Again, you can interrupt their charging up so that they don't shoot their energy-draining orbs, or just dodge them. Last are 2 Mirror Maidens. Their teleporting does get annoying, but I would pay more attention to the floor to make sure you don't get trapped in any of their cages. With enough DPS, you'll get through them quickly enough.
Scatter! Spring forth! Lightning through me! Lights out. Propagate! Gone! Winter shall eventually come.
These 3 big bishops spawn surrounding you at the start. If you have a crowd controller, you can group them easily, though either way, I'm edge baiting them so it'll be easier to manage them together, especially if they get pushed towards the edge.
Wings of darkness, come! To ashes! Let's light it up! Off we go! Yeah! Justice will prevail! Final war! Let's light it up! Teamwork is... You asked for it! Stop right there!
Midnight Fantastic.
Everybody stand back!
Then 3 Ruined Drakes will spawn and head straight to you. They're naturally grouped, so it'll be easier to deal AoE damage, and you should be able to kill them before they absorb an element or anything.
Justice will prevail! Final... I'm going in! Wings of darkness! Let's light it up! To ashes!
Moving on to floor 12. The first half doesn't really have elemental restrictions, but it does have multi-target waves, so bringing a team with lots of AoE DPS will make your clears more efficient. Bringing a healer to protect you from corrosion will also help, but it's just 2 Rift Hounds to deal with, so you can opt out of a healer if you're brave enough. For this half, I'm using the same Hyperbloom Freeze team. The second half is mainly single target though, and is where the most restrictions will be found. The first chamber has a Hydro Phantasm and Tulpa, so don't bring a Hydrocentric team. Use reactions on their permanent Hydro Aura like Pyro for Vaporize or Dendro to generate cores, and that can be used to your advantage. Then the second and third chambers have bosses with Geo Shields. These can be more efficiently destroyed with blunt damage, notably Geo units, Claymore and plunging attacks, and Overload. Zhongli's Hold skill also deals a lot of damage to Geo Shields. You can combine these different methods in your team. I'll also use the same second half team. Overload triggers and Beto's Claymore attacks are my main shield breaking methods. First up is the Perpetual Mechanical Array, which is a very straightforward fight. It's been coming and going from recent Abyss cycles, so if you already know how this goes, you can totally skip this. If not, then let's just recap. It telegraphs its attacks pretty obviously, so just keep on dodging them if you don't have a shielder. If it flies into the air, you can still continue attacking it if you have a ranged unit.
Germinate! No, my sword! Rain cutter!
After around 40 seconds or at 30% HP, it enters its defensive mode and creates 4 Ruined Sentinels which have their own attack and movement patterns. Look for the one with the ring aura. That's who you need to kill to make the PMA vulnerable again. If it's the Dorito, it dashes away from you, so as a trick, keep it between you and the PMA so it'll dash towards the PMA. If it's the crab, then it'll be very annoying to kill if it puts up its shields, so you can try stunning it by poking its eye or baiting it to the PMA so it'll jump on you. If it's the snake-like one, you can actually bait it beside the PMA since it will try to teleport towards you, which can also make it more convenient to kill the PMA. Once the PMA is vulnerable, just kill it ASAP. The second half starts with a lone Hydro Phantasm. You can start setting up team abilities and fields as you're killing it since this is where the Tulpa will also spawn.
To ashes!
With the Tulpa, take care in dodging its hard-hitting attacks. I'm using Bennett, so it's more dangerous since it can trigger a Vaporize on my Pyro Aura. When it spawns its mini Tulpas, destroy it so that the Tulpa can't absorb and go into its enhanced state. This can occur several times, so keep an eye out for it, and it's just a matter of staying alive and killing it ASAP. Again, if you have effective counter elements, you can take advantage of reactions on its Hydro Aura, like using my Bennett skill to always trigger Vaporize.
Justice will prevail! Stop! I'm going in! Wings of dark... Adventure time! Let's light it up! Final warning!
On to the second chamber. The first half starts with 2 Ruin Graders. However, there's an element of RNG where one, both, or neither of them will do a charging attack, which results in annoying positioning. To interrupt that, hit the glowing legs with a melee or ground attack. Alternatively, if you start the battle and go a bit backwards, that is guaranteed to not trigger the charging attack, though it'll delay you for a few more seconds. Either way, it's recommended to not let them do charging attacks to keep them in place. You can move beside either one and the other will walk towards you, so it's easy to grip them both.
Judgment! Lightning purified! Stand with me! Scatter!
Next are 2 Rift Hounds. I prefer to bait them to the opposite side where the next wave will spawn for positioning convenience. It can be really annoying when they blink and dash around, so you can edge bait them or crowd control them so that it's easier to damage them simultaneously. Be wary of their corrosion damage too. Those can't be prevented by shields, so your healer should take care of it. Otherwise, you'll have to avoid their attacks to prevent the corrosion application.
Know my sword! Witness the power! Lightning purified! Judgment!
The last wave are 2 construction mechs, which can have annoying random movement patterns. From the previous Abyss that featured them, you can implement a similar grouping method, which is to stay some distance away while between them, which causes them to wheel towards each other. From there, it's easier to deal AoE damage to them. Otherwise, you can opt not to do this, and it'll just be more random how they move about. If you have high DPS anyway, or a really good AoE team, you can just kill them as quickly as possible without the grouping strategy.
Propagate!
Next is the Fontaine local legend version of the Arithmetic Enhancer Mek. Its special mechanic is summoning a strong geoshield and creating a gravity reduction field that allows you to jump high. I'm combining both plunge attacks and overloads for shield breaking. Try to set up your team abilities and rotation right before the shield is completely destroyed. That way you don't have to waste time during its vulnerability period setting up, and you can go straight to your DPS window to maximize it. Pay attention to the indicators where it'll attack, and especially when it sends shockwaves across the ground. If you don't have any shielding or interruption resistance effects, you can jump to avoid those shockwaves staggering you. Then repeat the cycle until it's dead. If you can effectively get rid of its shield, then it'll end up mainly as a DPS check.
You asked for it! Let's light it up! I'm going in! To ashes! Wings of dark!
Finally, on to the last chamber. This first half features 4 waves that spawn further and further to the north end, so get ready. First are the Nobushi, which are pretty easy. Kill them simultaneously for time efficiency.
Spring forth! Out of my way! Judgment! Stand with me!
Next are these mechs. Damage them simultaneously and crowd control them as much as possible. If they staggered backwards, it will ideally be towards each other or the next wave, rather than away from each other or back to the starting point.
Mine's your fate. I'll settle this! Ha! Germinate!
Next are more mechs, though these ones are easier to group since they're melee enemies, so either one will charge towards you, which will help group them together.
Out of my way! Spring forth! Scatter! Dissipate! You can't run!
Last are these 2 Eremite Masters. Get rid of their summons to stun and lower their damage resistances to make them much easier to kill. If you find your grouping to be off in the first waves, then simply reset the run.
Lights out. Our bond is strong. Yes, judgment. Let me weave you a verse. Lightning, germinate.
And in the final chamber, we have the Legatus Golem boss. Like the Gravity Mech, this fight mainly consists of destroying its Geoshield with similar methods to open its stunned and vulnerable window, though there's no anti-gravity field this time. Then it's once again a DPS check and a matter of repeating this process until it's dead.
Let's light it up! Justice will prevail! Everybody stand back! Shadow Wave! To ashes! Let's light it up!
If left alive long enough, it unleashes stronger attacks, and possibly this Resonator, which you can destroy before it deals AoE damage. Again, I'm just demonstrating using Overload for shield breaking, but using Geo shield breakers will be a more convenient experience.
Let's light it up! Let's light it up! Teamwork is dreamwork! Midnight Pin! Justice will prevail!
And that's it for this cycle's Abyss Guide. Comment down below what you think of the enemies in this Abyss cycle and what teams you use to take them down. And if you're having a difficult time clearing it right now, don't fret. Abyss now only resets once a month, so you have lots of time to attempt it and continue to improve your teams if needed. So if this video helped you out, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!